I'm exercising watching the show. I'm cooking and watching the show. I think I joked to you, I'm like, oh, I might just start taking up knitting while watching this show. That's not a good sign, okay? Hi, this is Juniper.
Hello, this is Elle.
Welcome to our pod. Today, we're going to talk about two shows with Blossom in it. And these days, I feel like every other show has the word Blossom. I think it's a new fad. And the reason we're talking about two shows with the name Blossom in it is because, well, there's a proliferation of blossoms, and we ended up mistakenly watching two different shows. So, I mean, you laugh now, but at the time, I was like, so here's the background, right? I, Juniper, started watching the show Blossom. One word, Blossom. And and I was enjoying the beginning, so I texted Elle and I said, "Oh, when you're ready to watch the next show, we should talk about this. So check out Blossom." I think was it a week later? I get a text from you, and you said something like, "Oh, finally had time to watch it and love it. I binged the first 4 episodes or something of in Blossom, and it's great. Except when they switch to female lead, I'm like." Hold on. What show are you watching? This sounds like the plot of a different show, which I knew kind of which show it was, but I was like, did you watch Blossom or In Blossom? And
No.
of course,
off by a two-letter word. I was like, oh, I like this, and you're like, it's not the right show. I'm like, oh, well, I'm invested, so I'm gonna keep going.
Yes. So this is how we ended up watching two completely different shows. And I guess the upside of it, the silver lining of this mistake was that you ended up with a show that you really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
So you wanted to talk about it, even though you're still in the midst of watching that. And I haven't finished Blossom. I don't think I will finish it though. So again, that's probably very clear how I feel about Blossom. Again, it's not a bad show. I will talk about kind of why I'm going to drop it. So let's start with the good.
Yeah, In Blossom.
Yes, In Blossom. Not that you mistakenly fell into that rabbit hole. Tell me.
So,
sell me on the show, right? Because I didn't check it out.
Yeah. I'm only on episode 14, so it's still early days in the context of the entire drama. I think it's 30 something episodes. But so In Blossom, okay, so the male actor, the first and last time I watched him in anything was Kill Me, Love Me, and we did a pod on that where I could not get past the first 3 episodes. So my impression of him was oh, he's handsome, but he was playing this weird, crazy character, and I was not into it. So when you said Blossom, but that I thought you meant In Blossom, I'm like, oh, it's the same actor.
You thought I wanted you to check out Liu Xueyi again. Give him a second chance.
Yeah, right. So I started watching, and then the first 2 episodes sucked me in. So, and I have a different opinion of him now. I mean, I thought it's not like I thought he couldn't act. It's just that I didn't like the character he was acting. But in this one, he's actually kind of cute. Not cute. I'll explain more. So the basic premise of the story is that there are these 2 childhood friends, a boy and a girl, and they under some sort of tragedy they separated, and now they're grown up, and he has been looking for her. They actually were in an arranged marriage. So as children, the emperor gave them this wedding or arranged wedding. So, but they separated for a long time, and the next time you see them in present day, she's living a really hard life. She's orphaned. She has her face has been disfigured, so there's a scar that goes across the middle of her face, and she works as a corpse collector. So she works with the local guy who handles all the dead bodies in the city. So when someone passes away, she goes and collects them and arranges for their burial. So she lives a very otherworldly life in terms of being outcast and ignored. But she's a very spunky, kind of optimistic girl deep down. Like she's not like
Mm-hmm.
hard trodden. Like she's actually very you're like she sees the good in things. She's a kind person. She's actually very good at her job. Like she learned from her um like she apprenticed on how to examine corpses, so she has her own skill set in itself, even though most people kind of ignore her and are afraid of her essentially. And they cross paths again, and long story short, he figures out who she is, and he's not disgusted by her scar. Like he just loves who she is. And then I think so this is happening with him and this actress, and I'm like, oh, they have cute chemistry. And this is me not knowing that she is not the main actress. I was like, because I didn't really pay attention to the posters or anything. Like, as you know,
Right.
I don't really read synopses or watch trailers. So I'm just watching, enjoying it. And suddenly, and then they show this other girl, and she's very beautiful, but in a very, I don't want to be rude, but like in a synthetic way. Like it's very modern. I think you call it TikTok face. Like it's a very modern way of looking at beauty, and she's sort
Well,
of
it's also a
bloom.
fake face. Plastic
Yeah,
surgery.
it's like if you run it through a filter on
Yeah.
a beauty app, right? So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay. I mean, she's striking, but I didn't pay any attention to her, not realizing she's actually like the female lead, because she was playing this kind of not so likable character. She's like a really rich younger sister of the main lead's friend, and they have a lot of influence in whatever city they're in. And she has a huge crush on the male lead, and she wants to marry him. And he's like, I don't like you. Like deep in his heart, he really likes that childhood friend, and he finally found her. So he's like, he basically is like, well, we have an arranged marriage that was granted by the emperor, so we're getting married. And she's like, it took her like a day to get over it. So I'm talking about the girl with the scar. It took her a day to kind of like process. She's like, oh, he still wants to marry me, even though I'm like this, I look like this, and I have nothing. So he was, and he himself, he's from a noble family, but he's an illegitimate son, so he has his own demons and burdens. But anyways, he has a legitimate role in society. So he basically was like, I'm gonna marry the disfigured fate girl. And then but the scheming villain sister comes in and basically does a face swap. So this is where it's like, wait, what? So she does a face swap. So she's like, she was willing to take on the face of the disfigured girl so she can marry the main lead. And he doesn't know. So the real girl is now trapped in the body of the TikTok face girl, and she's like and she was left for dead basically. But like she was taken away, and I don't know, she was basically they were going to kill her so that the rich sister can marry the guy, even though she has a fake face. But at the night of the wedding, someone kills the rich sister who had the fake face, and then the original friend who now has the other woman's face is still alive. And so now you're watching it. You have to adjust your brain. You have to remember the corpse collector is now in the body of the rich sister, and he thinks that his wife is dead, though his childhood friend is dead. So he's mourning, he's grieving, and then but meanwhile the woman who survives with the fake face, she's like, she doesn't know who wanted to kill her. And remember, she was orphaned, so years ago her family had been slaughtered by unknown people as well. So there is someone after her entire family, and once they found out she was alive, they came after her too. So she gets close to the male lead because now he, months later, this is a few months after her death, and he supposedly is now going to marry the princess, like the emperor's sister. So people are like, well, he got over her quick, but it wasn't. It's like he has a secret assignment to look for other villains. And so now they're together, and I'm on episode 14, and the thing is that he's starting to feel feelings for this sister, and he's like hating himself because he's like, I'm such a horrible person. I spent like my whole youth waiting for my childhood friend to come back. I married her. She hasn't even been dead for 2 months, and I'm already feeling something for this other girl. Like, what's wrong with me? So he's drinking, and he's very, very confused because he sees glimmers of the childhood friend, and he can't, but he doesn't know that she's still alive, and she's not ready to tell him because she has a target on her back. So she's
Right.
like, I'm not.
She's that's why she didn't come forth.
Yeah, so she doesn't want to tell anyone, and the only people that know her real identity are two people. One is like this other woman who's like her childhood friend who grew up with her after she was orphaned, and then this other guy who she saved in there was some attack, and she saved him. She saved his life, and they're just drinking buddies. They just meet like once a month at a tavern to like have a meal, but she didn't know until later that he's actually the head of one of the four great families in the city, and they actually are being investigated by the male lead because he works for like the emperor. And so these are just four independent families, but they have a lot of influence and power over the city. And so she actually gains she has two very strong rival men, but they're both very loyal to her. Well, one of them is more loyal. The friend is very loyal. He actually likes her. And so she said something because he thought she was a phony, and she said something, and he's like, only she, the woman who saved him, would know or say these things. So there are two people who know her real identity. No one else knows. So that's where we're at. And yeah, so I got sucked in, and I actually really like watching the storyline unfold. There's a lot of other characters that I have not talked about because there's some, political stuff happening, but it's not like palace drama. It's more like it's like a mix of
It's
martial
supposed to be a
arts.
mystery
Yeah.
adventure, I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like there's these four families, and so you meet the heads of each of them. They all have their own agendas, and some of them are like feeling suffocated by this sort of pact that they have because of the four families. There's also hierarchies within the four families, right? So that the one at the low end of the totem is like, I don't want to always be fourth in this power like struggle. And then you have the government sort of, well, not the government, but the court and the emperor wanting to find the bad apples also who may be hiding behind these four families. So you're watching that unfold, but then you also kind of like okay, so the male lead, I don't know how to say his name, the actor, but I was
Liu
like,
Xueyi.
okay, so he, to me, in this character, like, he's supposedly very stoic, but he's such a warm-hearted person as well. Like, and the watching the struggle he has, like like where he's like, I should not be falling for this girl, but then they actually even explain it. So like, despite all the weird logic defying circumstances as you're watching this, they actually like explain what every time he sees a coincidence with her, like they can explain it. Well, she's she's studying how to do this work, so they're like, yeah, and that's why she's like this. And so even her maid doesn't know. Like, the maid that followed the sister doesn't know. Like, she used to be afraid of her because she was not a nice person. And so, but now she's slowly like, oh, I guess like, oh, she had a life altering experience because someone tried to kill her. So now she's a new person. So like, if you can get past that, like, I read a lot of comments where people were like, I miss the original actress, the one that appeared as the corpse collector in the first like two episodes, and she still appears in the flashbacks, so it's not like she's completely forgotten.
Well,
But
I've seen pictures of them together in videos, and they do have better chemistry as two equally well-matched, mature people than
yes,
he has with Jingyi, who is just idol face.
yes, and that's the only part I wish. I know that this is a story, and I understand that, but I think I told you, I was like, I didn't mind seeing a female lead with, a quote unquote scar on her face. Like, you don't see the scar after like 2 seconds.
Well, why
honestly.
would you mind about the scar anyways?
Because I think in general, there's an expectation your leads should be very beautiful, right? I mean, that's sort of cdrama.
Well, that's
right?
a cdrama thing, but that's the wrong standard. But
yes. I'm not saying
for this type of show.
Yes, I'm saying for this type of show, like, I almost wish that there wasn't this face swap where now he ends up with the beautiful, quote unquote beautiful woman, because I thought the first girl was fine.
The Barbie doll.
Yeah, like the first actress, which I guess she's not. I don't know. People say she
got
not
a
that
lot of hate, you know that, right? Because of that, because she got a lot of fan backlash from the other actresses' fans.
Who?
The girl who played the original
Why did
female
she
lead
get?
corpse. Because
Why?
Because the other actress has a legion of fans who are crazy, and they're just like fervently like, because people were saying people like to bash Jingyi's acting because she's such an idol face and it's frozen and it's like all affectation. That's the general byline. And I can see why people say that. It's like you're out of place in this sort of show. And so I guess people were saying how, they have great chemistry, the first couple. Why the heck did you have to swap? And so that girl got a lot of hate because of that.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Actually, I actually would agree that she and the male lead have very good chemistry. Like I would have eaten up an entire drama.
But
I
sure,
would actually
and well
like to see them.
matched.
Yeah, I would actually like to see them in a legitimate coupling in another drama because I don't like I had never seen her before. She's actually very beautiful, like in a different but in a different more natural way.
So let me ask you. So you like the show because the plot, or because the first pairing chemistry carried it enough for you? Because you're only on 14. Remember, you have to get through 20 more episodes. Or no, 18 more. I think it's 32 episodes long. Can it sustain itself that way with the wrong face and wrong actress in place?
I mean, so far it's working. So far, I would say.
I mean, is the chemistry there, or are they not interacting enough for you to question that? Does that make sense? Like, what is making you compelled to want to watch more?
So I think it helps that they do the flashbacks by bringing in the original actress. Because
so you're living on crumbs, breadcrumbs. No, I'm serious. I have to question, right? Like, what is it? Is it the goodwill built from the beginning 2 episodes, or is it more than that?
I would say it's the first 2 episodes for me. Now, okay, to be fair to the existing, like the actual female lead, I think she's trying very hard. I mean, I hope that she worked with the other actress so they have similar. Like,
well, that was another thing that was all over the internet. They're like, did she even bother to emulate the actresses? Like,
they're not the same.
No, they're totally not in sync.
But if you compare how she was as like the rich sister, like the legitimate like mean girl, she is she's a softer, kinder version. And so she had to play actually 2 characters, right? And this is me never seeing her in anything else. Maybe she acts like this in every drama. I have no idea. But I think, like I said, for where I am at right now, it still kind of works because I still, in my head, I remember her, the other actress. And I think she's carrying it through. I don't watch it and think, oh my god, she's not that. Like, I don't watch it. Let me ask you this. That.
If there was no flashbacks and there wasn't the same actress in the first with the strong chemistry, would you have been able to sustain this drama the way? Because it's kind of a bizarre conversation right now we're having where I feel like I said, is it just the goodwill built from the first few episodes that's carrying you through this with such warm and fuzzies? Because the way you're talking about it, I think you really like the show. But then when I ask you, like, I'm probing right now, right? I'm probing and saying, what is it about the show? Well, you told me basically everything up to the point plot-wise. Is it the plot? Is it the... Does that make sense? Like, I'm trying to get to the... it sounds like it's more goodwill built from what you liked at the beginning.
I mean, yeah. I mean, look, the storyline is very thin. I mean, it's not a complex storyline, right? Mm-hmm. So you're basically watching a lot of interactions. I think.
So that means that. Sorry, let me just ask, right? So to me, that means the interactions have to work, and we do watch dramas for good interaction, like chemistry, right, and dynamics. Yes. Is that working now in the second half? Well, it's not even second half, but.
So I think okay, part of it is like part of it because as the viewer, right, he didn't actually lose the woman he loves. She's just stuck in a different, not even a different body. I think it's implied it's still the same body, it's a different face.
Yeah,
like some voodoo master.
Even though the 2 actresses are not anywhere alike in body shape or anything.
Physically, yeah. Right? And the 2 guys, the first and second male lead, they actually have really good chemistry as well. Like, I've read comments where people are like, I just want to see the bromance too. Like, because one is technically her husband because the wedding actually happened. Like, he did marry her. So she died. He died.
She got killed after the wedding, like on the wedding night.
Yes, before, the... Whatever,
that's why it's a bigger scandal if he moved on the surface because he married her
because he's technically widowed. Yeah, it's not like she died before the ceremony. So they actually had the ceremony, and then the other guy, like, he never told the girl, like the second male lead, he never told her that he likes her. But I think when he thought she died, he was really heartbroken. Like because she treated him like a normal guy. But remember, he is head of this house or whatever. And so I think for me when I watch it, the characters themselves are very interesting. Like I said, the storyline is thin, but the characters to me are more nuanced and complex. And they make up for it. And it's like I don't know who's considered the second female lead. There is an actress, the friend, but I don't know. They'll probably pair her off with the second male lead. But as I'm watching it, like there's two female leads, as far as I'm concerned. There's two female leads. There's one male lead. There's a second male lead who can ostensibly rival the male lead, and I'm happy with that right now. And so I am enjoying it, and it is interesting. I read that this was doing really well in China up until when the double came and overcame it in terms of popularity. And so I was like, oh, it's interesting because this is like a more traditional mystery, and the double was more theatrical. So I can see why genre-wise, they're very similar, right? It's about the double identities or mistaken identities.
Well, most of these are about revenge, mystery, plotting. If we went high level description-wise.
And I would say this is not really about revenge. It's just about like wanting to know the truth, and she's also trying to say, keep herself safe. And actually, I was thinking a lot about Go East when we watch Go East, where they talk about like how they work in the workplace setting, because her relationship with the male and female leads, they are basically co-workers at this point. And she's like, yeah, I just want to help you, but she's really trying to find out who tried to kill her. So there's that that part of the mystery I want to know too.
So to sum it up, it sounds like it's the chemistry from the carryover from the first couple, the setup of the story, the chemistry between certain actors, though not always between the main couple, it sounds like. And I've seen pictures and, like I said, videos of it, and they did do a very good job aesthetically speaking, I think. The look.
Yeah.
His costumes were beautiful, okay? And Liu Xueyi is a very good-looking man. Not my type per se, but I know a lot of women love him. Right? He looked really good in the shot.
He has really good like facial structure.
Yeah, bone structure.
Yeah,
it's a very
his
delicate
bone structure is beautiful too.
Not my type for some reason. That's kind of too Jeremy Irons for me. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I can see that.
Right?
It's a very strong. It's strong but balanced, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
To me, it's a little bit too weasel face.
I feel like I don't know what he looks like in contemporary look, like would he still be as handsome? Like I think he looks handsome in costume.
He looks better in costume, except for in The Blood of Youth, where he would play a monk with no hair on. But people loved him in that. Yeah.
Oh.
He was too old for the monk. He was supposed to. I think the monk's real age in the manga or whatever is supposed to be like 18, but he's like 30-something, mid-30s, man. So you're like, he's a little bit old. Anyways, we're not here to talk about Blood of Youth.
But anyways, so I would say so far, at episode 14, I'm still liking it, even though this is purely like the first time I think I accidentally watched something I had zero intention to watch. Like
you
to the point where
into it.
Yeah, to the point where I knew nothing about the actors, I knew nothing about the plot, and had zero idea of like the hype. Yeah. So, but I'm enjoying it.
Here's two happy coincidences, right? Or mistakes. And it sounds like you're gonna keep to this show till the end, and then you'll maybe come back and let me know how you feel at the end of the 32 episodes. Because to me, that's a long investment if you didn't like a show, and you wouldn't, and I wouldn't invest in the show that way.
Exactly. So but then now we can talk about your drama, which I still have not. I didn't even check out the first episode yet, but
so. I has said check it out because it was a worthy drama at the beginning to check out because of the premise and the way it's a very well filmed, executed drama. Technical stuff wise, I think you can't really fault it. The setup it's a rebirth story technically. So here, in the first episode or two, you basically get the previous life, right, where they set up the fact that it's the female lead Dou Zhao and this general Su Mo. They meet. He is already in full rebellion mode against the royal family to get revenge for his uncle who was wrongly kind of killed. But he's dying because he's been poisoned. And she's dying because she dies. So they died together in the first life, basically, when right after they meet pretty much. And then they wake up and he doesn't remember his previous life. She does. And she's like, I want to change fate. Right? Like, and basically you've got a strong female lead in terms of independence and smarts. And she uses her knowledge, not just from like the previous life, but she is a smart woman, right? To kind of navigate the ins and outs of life in these big families that are politically tied. And he is the scion of a oh my god, nobility, right? And he's a very young general who's considered very good and fierce. So at first they started kind of like enemies, right? Because he's suspicious of what she's up to and stuff. Like, because she's always like in the background doing something, right? Shows up like when he's like, "What the heck?" Her family's up to something, but eventually, of course, he falls for her, and they get together. But so you kind of watch and you go, "Oh, this is promising." You want to see what happens. I have to say though, I'm on episode 26, and it's a 34 episode drama. I want to say, I don't think I'm gonna finish it. I know I'm not gonna finish it because I started weightlifting and watching the show. Like, I'm exercising watching the show. I'm cooking and watching the show. I think I joked to him like, oh, I might just start taking up knitting while watching this show. That's not a good sign, okay? When you're watching a show and you're like, what else can I, do while watching the show? What I'm saying is it was not, I don't feel invested in the show. Was I invested in the beginning? I would say yes. Like at the beginning few episodes, you see them meet and you go, oh, these are very charismatic. Like he's very charismatic, right, in the beginning. And then you're going like, where is this going? It just kind of boils down to very petty family squabbles. Like you can sort of compare elements of it to like the Double, where there's the revenge. Her mother was basically, she thought her mother was murdered by her stepmother, but really it was, she killed herself because her stepmother usurped her place, basically, who was a friend of hers. Like slept with the dad, and the dad is a weak dad, and he was like, oh, I must protect her. Da, da, da. So that was like kind of the first arc or first like challenge to go over after the rebirth story. And so it becomes like bad stepmother again, right? Who's scheming, except this is like small time schemer compared to the stepmother in the Double. Like what I loved about the Double, I think what we all loved was the outrageous theatricality, right? The stakes really didn't have to be that high, but everyone made it so high, and you enjoyed the way they made it so high, right? It was like everything was like I'm not just a petty person. Like the stepmother in the Double was not just a petty person. She was kind of a complex villain, right? Every villain in the Double had weird like motivations, but you kind of understood that how they were like this. There's so many villains in Blossom, but they're all like, wow, you're just a really petty person. Like you're just like a petty, annoying person out for yourself, right? Like they're bad parents in this show, they're bad siblings in this show, and you're just like, again. Right? Like, I feel like, you ever read or heard of, know the general story of the dream of the Red Mansions, Hong Mo?
Yeah.
You know kind of the type of story it is. I mean, it's a classic in Chinese canon, right? Chinese literary canon. But do you really want to watch or read that story?
I mean, I used to.
Personally.
I used to, but I don't have time.
But if
I know what you mean. It's like the mundane. It's like watching, I don't want to say Downton Abbey, but it's kind of like when you watch. It sounds like you're following a family, a very big family, and then they all have, like you said, they all have their agendas and their motivations. But it's like small potato. It's really not that big a deal. But within the hierarchy of the family, maybe there's some.
It is big potato, but it feels small. Does that make sense? Like it wasn't theatrical. I mean, it's again nothing, no fault of the actors or anything, right? Like I felt like a little bait and switched in that it had high promise for me for the, oh, this is gonna be exciting. There's rebirth, da da da. I felt like somewhere in between, I forgot this was a rebirth story. Like occasionally, they'll trot it out, be like, oh, if I don't change, she keeps saying, oh, fate is really hard to change, right? Like I thought I changed this, but you can't move the river of fate. Like that comes back as a theme. I'm like, yeah, I almost forgot this was that you were reborn. Like to be honest, I just thought, you guys were just.
It's like she's repeating the same mistakes.
She's not. She's actually very smart. So what I'll say about the female lead is she's very pretty and she's very smart, independent. But that's my highest praise for her. It's not because I go, oh, I love her as a female lead and as a romantic interest of half of the coin. Does that make sense? So if you're looking for romance, you might think, oh, this can be really grand romance. No, not really. Right? They have their moments. It's sweet, but it almost feels watered down. You're kind of like it petered out, it muted. It's like saying, how would I actually thought of this before our session. I was like, the way I would describe it in a nutshell is I was expecting a popcorn flick, like a really good popcorn flick, like, right? And what you gave me was like grits with butter.
What? Give you what?
Grits with butter. Grits. Nothing wrong with grits, right?
Yeah,
it's a bit bland. If you want the crunch and
mushy.
the calories, yes, you want the crunch and the calories and all the toppings of popcorn in the big theater, and instead you find yourself at home on an early morning eating like plain grits, but you spiced it up with some butter.
Can you imagine putting that in your like review? Or like an online review?
People like, what is wrong with her? Did she eat too much grits? It's gotten to her head. Does that make sense? Like the characters have so much promise, and then you kind of went down all these different side avenues, and the people are just so annoying. Not the main characters, mind you. It's the petty villains, right? And the pettiness of like the male lead's father is so hateful. But then I haven't gone to there yet, but I already know what's going to happen. So the brother, he has a little brother who's going to turn evil because it turns out he's not the real son of the mother. It's the father had a side. Yeah. So he's not legit, right? So he turns evil because he's not really a good person at heart. And this kind of tipped him over the edge. So, yeah, it didn't deliver on the romance for me. The middle part, like at the beginning, I would say that when you watch the show or when I watch the show, I was like, oh, I want to see what happens. I want to see what happens. At some point when I stopped watching to pause, I didn't feel compelled to go back. Now, for a while when I did go back, I was like, oh, I still want to see what happens. But maybe I'll fast forward a little. Does that make sense? It's starting to creep to be like to that. That's when you know as a viewer that the show is no longer working for you. Right? Yeah. It felt kind of like not draggy because it's a very fast-paced show. That's the thing. Things happen and you're like, oh, okay. But then you're like, do we really need to go there now? Like, do we really need to know all of these ins and outs and see all these machinations?
Do you think I was gonna say, do you think if it's shorter, like if it was just like
Yes, 20, if it was 26 episodes, I would have been done by now.
Yeah, like 26 episodes minus some of the extraneous things and then just wrap it up tightly. That would have been better. I mean, like, it sounds like if you could keep going and watch, like, a director's cut version where it's focused on the things you care about, would that be still enough of a draw to finish?
No, because they never delivered on the things I thought I was going to care about. Does that make sense? So that's what I'm saying. It's not necessarily their fault. It's my fault for thinking that this was going to be a drama about X. And then, I said, popcorn versus grits, right? I was like, oh, I thought I was getting popcorn. You gave me grits. Oh, is it my fault for not understanding I was going to get grits? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And like I said, the main actor and actress are very likable in their role, and but his character, I would say, became also more muted once he fell for her. Like he's like sending her gifts from afar. It's very sweet and all of that stuff. I'm like, in some ways, it's so like watered down. Like maybe that's the Asian way, right? Or Chinese way that people want. Back in the day, that's how people behave. I'm like, I can see that, but that's not what I watch these type of dramas for. And if you put a rebirth element in there, I do not expect you to suddenly devolve into a more traditionally minded, Dream of the Red Chambers type of family dynamic and political machinations drama.
Yeah. Wait, when you say rebirth, is she back in her own body?
Yes,
I forgot.
they grow. Okay. They wake up as children forms of themselves, and she actually grows up and stuff. So yes,
she goes back. So she basically relives her entire existence as the same person.
Except she doesn't end up with the same husband who was bad, right? For her, a weak husband. Oh. In fact, the husband ends up with her half sister, who is more evil in the previous life. but she's now like kind of a nicer girl here. But because of she ends up with the husband, she ends up with a tragic death. Not because of the husband per se, it's actually because of her evil mom, who's the stepmother. So there's a lot of that going on, and I feel like who would enjoy this show? Like, why was this show so big? Right? Aesthetically speaking, I can see that. It kind of reminds me of Meng Lu. Remember that show with
Which one's that one?
A few years ago with oh my god, what is her name? I'll have to look it up. Never mind. It's a very like aesthetically pleasing if you like Chinese costume dramas, and this was set in the Ming Dynasty, right? Like it's filmed in a filmic quality, and like I said, the actors do justice to their roles, right? It's a very understated type of like Eastern style romance. Is the way I would describe it. But I guess I like more Western style romances, maybe, right?
No, I mean we liked what was it, snowy what was it?
That's true. Yeah, you can feel like the romance, right?
Yeah. It exists in Chinese in cdrama land.
Yeah,
you know it's
like
funny. Well, you said no. I was gonna say, I'm kind of jumping around, but like when you talk about rebirth and all that, right? One of my favorite, it's like a C novel, a web novel, but I don't think it was ever adapted. Was about a woman who rebirth in like ancient China, but she's like a modern girl, and she's like her life would have been miserable, but she's like, I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna change it. And she was an avid foodie in the modern world, so she like basically was like cooking, and they're like, she's supposed to be like the daughter, but like a ignored, outcasted daughter within this giant family structure, and people gave her nothing. They're like she's like cast in like the furthest house of on the property, and with like the worst raw ingredients for food, and then she's like a foodie, so she's like, I'll make do, and she's telling people like, you gotta give me all the pig lard, and they're like, what, like because in the old days people didn't cook with, I guess, pig fat or whatever. So like the author, like the real author who wrote the book, I obviously probably looked into how ancient cooking was, and then she made it so that this girl's like, oh, if you cook with fat, it tastes better, and she's like conjuring up all these delicious meals, and then she starts to gain like admirers and gain the respect of her family, and then she opens a restaurant. Anyways, I'm going on a tangent, but like in a rebirth story, I feel like that would be enjoyable in any type of situation where if you have the chance to like redo your situation, where it's so fantastical that like you can like you want to like root for the girl. But like if you're telling me she lived her whole life, ended tragically, and now she has to go back to the beginning to when she's a child and redo it again just to avoid like marrying like a scummy husband or whatever.
Not to avoid,
like, or to
she
not
does
marry.
change things, right? Because she's smart and she's independent. It's like it's not on a grand scale in the book, or they don't remind you that this is like earth-shatteringly different, right? Like this could have been no rebirth involved, and it still would have been fine as a story. Like it would have been intact. Does that make sense? They didn't need the rebirth.
Because I feel like rebirth is where you take all the information you have and you do something. Like it's only interesting if there's something significantly shifted in the story. But if I feel like this is the same situation and like the same people. I mean, you can't change the outlier, not outliers. You can't change the external variables, right? Your family structure is your family structure. But yeah, like I mean, I feel like that's part of the thing with Princess Royal too, right? Like where they both died and then they came back earlier.
Well, Princess Royal, they did use the info, right? And I'm not saying this one Dou Zhao doesn't use the info. It's just you forgot it's about rebirth and changing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right?
Yeah.
In Princess Royal, you don't forget that. It's just more like, why are you guys together at all? Given how acrimonious your relationship really is, it's not even like a misunderstanding acrimonious. It really is acrimonious, right? Like you're like, oh, why bother, right? Like, what's your motivation? But yeah, so. And like I said before, right? My high praise. Oh, I just looked up. Meng Lu is the Dream of Splendor.
Oh, I never saw that. But
yeah, so I did try to watch it. I couldn't
yeah.
watch that either halfway through, and I know everyone else loved it. It's like that aesthetically pleasing. So to me, like you can be smart, but why do you? If smart is an independent and strong and intelligent is the highest praise I can heap on you in a romantic drama, something's wrong with the romance in my mind. Now, you can say this was never meant to be a romance, then I'd be like, okay, I get it. It's family and political drama with some stab of romance, sure. Then why did I watch this, right? Like, does that make sense? Like, it's like saying, are you the one? The female lead was smart, but didn't make her any less romantic as a lead, right? Like, there was that romantic, like, burn for us, the audience who liked it. Versus here, it's like, oh, I wish you would deliver more on the romance because there's so much potential there. But it petered out, and you're just like, and then they got married, and it was just like kind of like, oh, plain vanilla, like a little bit, right? Like I'm glad you're happy, you have each other's back, and yada yada. You'll overcome all, you know. And then what? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think when you start to be like, and then what? So what? You know, then it's. Then you probably don't. You're not that invested, and you know that you're
I am not the right audience for it. Do I like the actors? Yes, like Meng Ziyi, she's been around forever. I feel like, and she's never been like the top billing. And the guy, Li Yun, what's his name? Oh my god, he was in like Love Like the Galaxy, which was very popular a few years ago. He is a second male lead. Except as a second male lead, he barely shows up because there's so many people involved. I didn't like that drama either. So again, if you're listening to this as the audience of this podcast, you're probably like, oh, Juniper has really weird taste because she doesn't like any of these big dramas that everyone else loves, right? Like Meng Lu, right? And the Dream of Splendor or Love Like the Galaxy. Again, I felt like Love Like the Galaxy was just overblown and long. And it was just like, oh my God, so many squabbles. And, you know, it's the same thing repeated. And like it could have been half as long, much better, right? Like I will have to watch it like at double speed to get through it quickly.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, I don't think I'm gonna finish this show because I kind of know how it's gonna end, and I don't really care to go through the paces. I mean, maybe I will still lift weights. Maybe I'll take up knitting, but I don't need to watch the show to do any of those
You'll
things.
You'll be stronger, more dexterous after this.
Yes. So I am fully invested in another show I told you about, right? Which I was totally not expecting to check out because it stars not my favorite actress up till now, Bai Lu, and it's Moonlight Mystique. And I checked it out on a whim because it looks so cheap and everything, and looked like, I was like, oh, this looks cartoonish, right? The way they design everything. But my God, I am invested in that show. And that's, again, going back to what I said, how do I know I'm invested? Because I actually want to sit down and watch the show. And I'm caught up in real time with all of the airing episodes. Versus, that last show I did that with was The Double, by the way. Right? Where I was like watching it as it was coming out. Because I was like, all right, are there new episodes today? I have to watch it. Like, that's how I feel about Moonlight Mystique. Because like, oh my God, what else? You know, I want to see what happens next. Like, I'm not gonna go lift weights and watch Moonlight Mystique. I have to make time to sit in front of the computer or TV to watch it. That's how I know I'm like, oh, I'm very invested.
Yeah.
So, so hopefully you'll check that out.
Yeah, no, I plan to. I was just telling you, like, for In Blossom, it's one of those shows because, you know, it's been pretty busy around, you know, end of the year, and I was like, and all the episodes are out, so I can watch it anytime. And I was like, yeah, I would kind of like not have time, and then I would kind of forget that I liked it. And then and then as I'm watching it, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember now why I like it. So it's not as like drawing me in as some of the other shows, but when I am watching it, I'm like, oh yeah, I like all the characters so far. Like, there's no one annoying to have to mention. Like there's no like irritating character. Like, you're just watching and you want to see how. And the real, you know, as a romantic, the real thing that you want to see is when they reveal her true identity to him and what's going to happen after that. I think that's a carrot dangling right now. So we'll see if they do it early or later on. Like, how long can they pull this off? And then I guess if you were to ask me, oh, is there still chemistry once he knows that she's the girl that, you know, his childhood friend or his wife, essentially, I think that will determine if I will finish it, because the chemistry could change at that point.
When do you think they're gonna find out though? It could be like episode 30 out of 32.
They always like, there'll be a scene where you're like, he's gonna know, and then something happens and you're like, oh, come on. I mean, you don't fault him because it's not that, you know, she looks like a different person, so he's like, oh, I'm going crazy. Because she'll say,
I'm imagining her in other people, basically. His wife,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or
Like he's like, oh, I'm grieving so hard for her that I'm seeing her in this girl I don't even like. Like he never liked her. Like there are scenes when before the wedding where he basically just told her off. Like he had zero interest in her, and she was just kind of clinging on he was accessible to her because she would her brother's friend, really good friends with him, and now he's like the only reason he was tolerating her is because he's like, it's my best friend's sister, so I have to like keep her safe, as she's under my wing. So now he's feeling things, and he's like, what the hell? What's wrong with me? And so yeah, so well, yeah, I probably will check out at least 1 or 2 episodes of Blossom, the correct one, because
So the early episodes are probably much more intriguing, like I said, right? As I got more and more into it, I lost the will to want, not the will, but compel. I felt less and less compelled to keep going. Because I said, I had the same feeling about Blossom as you do with In Blossom, which is, oh, sometimes I'll pause and not watch and then go back and be like, oh, I still want to know what happens, right? So you keep watching a bunch of episodes and then you stop again. Now I'm just like, oh, okay, is it over? How many more weights do I have to lift? I think I did enough, like, like, does that make sense? So like, okay, I think I did enough squats today. I don't need to do more squats. So, all right.
Well, anyways. Well, it was interesting.
Hopefully you'll find the time to check out Moonlight Mystique soon, because I do want to talk to you about that and see what your reaction is. Because it's hard to put my finger on it. Like, if you say what's so outstanding about it, there's nothing like new necessarily, but yet it feels fresh. Is all I can say.
Yes, and to hear you feel the way you feel, despite it starring Bailu, is very because I know how you feel. And so when you were saying, "Oh, I like this," I was like, "What? What? What do you mean?"
You're like, "What's wrong with her? Did she fall on her head?" Like, I was like, I changed my opinion. I like Bailu in this. And you're like, huh. This is not till the end of the moon for me. Thank God.
Yeah. And and I've actually never seen her in anything other than the Dylan Wang drama, so I would be interested. So,
I'm sure this is much better. Yeah, like it's cute and fast paced. It's kind of like watching a good anime because it has a kind of cartoony aesthetics, and the characters are like kind of, especially the male lead. You're kind of like, I think I texted you at some point. Like, he has. At first, you're kind of like, oh, he's kind of like Dongfang Qingcang from, the devil from Love Between Fairy and Devil. And then you're like, oh, but he's kind of a cute puppy too, who's just really big and tall. And he's kind of like the elven prince, from a cartoon or something. Like, it's a weird, I don't know how to describe it. So.
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, I just saw a preview where he grows bunny ears because she gave him the wrong medicine. So I'm like, oh, I can't wait to watch that.
What's funny? I saw this tangent, like, so in Blossom, the leads, so on camera they look similar height, but I saw a picture of them, like, when they do those opening ceremonies.
She's a very petite girl.
She's so tiny next to him. I was like,
and he's not a small guy. Like, he's pretty skinny but tall.
I didn't realize how tall he was until I saw that picture of them in, normal setting, like on stage, where there's just right next to each other, and I'm like, oh, she's so diminutive.
Makes you wonder how much lifts they have to wear, right? The girls, like, remember in the Starry Love, Landy Lee's pretty petite. I think you could see she wore like 2-inch lifts sometimes, or 1-inch lifts in her shoe, because there was a scene where Xiao Dian Youqing, right, Chen Xinxi's character had to carry her, and you can see her boots, and you're like, oh, it's amazing how they don't twist their ankles. So
because on camera the actress, she does not look that petite, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. She's really tiny. So anyways, it's just, I just remember when you said that the other actor's like 6'2", I'm like, yeah, these men are all really tall.
So go finish In Blossom, start Moonlight Mystique, and report back on I guess how you feel in a week or two, right?
Yeah, hopefully. Knock on wood.
I know what I'll be doing.
Weights.
No, waiting for the next tranche of released episodes for Moonlight Mystique. So I don't know.
You know how many episodes that's gonna be?
It's actually 40 episodes. right? And
Yeah, the
originally, before
maximum
I started,
capacity.
I know I was like, oh, it's long, and now I'm like, no, I can, because the story has like 5 arcs, I think, because they're basically on a quest to find different emotions like greed, hate, like that sort of thing. So it's actually in some ways, it is very like a fantasy adventure story, right? They're questing, but each
It's like
quest brings.
Back from the Brink.
Yes, it actually reminds me of that show in the sensibilities, not aesthetically
Yeah.
speak. Oh, aesthetically too, but in the dynamics and the character. And we really liked Back from the Brink, right? It was
Yes.
low
Yes.
key, but it was like so cute and sweet and normal. Like it's a
Yes.
very modern show in some ways, with the whole fantasy ancient costumes type of like veneer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
When you saying retrieving different things, that's what I thought
yeah.
of.
So yes, if you have to anchor it, I will anchor it on Back to the Brink with some similarities, or at least on the surface, to Love Between Fairy and Devil, and even the Starry Love.
So you just basically used 3 dramas that we like to describe
Yes.
Moonlight
So I like
Mystique.
this drama a lot because obviously when it reminds you of other dramas you really like, that's it. That says something, right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, you sold me.
I didn't say,
So
oh, this reminds me of Till the End of the Moon, you know? Even though it has moon, lots of moon in the title and moon in,
Bye Lou is
yeah.
it?
So, all
Oh,
right.
all right.
Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.